Quinn Ewers might be the next Vince Young, but can the Longhorns take down their Red River nemesis? Let's talk about it.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to FanBuzz Weekly. I am Tyler, joined by Patrick, and it is a big week in college football. We have the Red River Showdown, Red River rivalry, which is always a tongue twister. But Texas and Oklahoma, this is probably far and away the biggest game of the week. We got two undefeated teams, red hot, Big 12 contenders. Texas fighting for a college football playoff spot. Patrick, I'm just curious. What are your thoughts on this game? What do you think is going to stand out? Does Oklahoma have a shot at taking down the Longhorns?
All right, I'm going to say they do have a shot, but only because of Oklahoma's defense, which isn't that weird to say? Like, when's the last time Oklahoma has had a relevant defense, and that's what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Of course, I'm not sure that the opponents are really worthy, this far into the season in terms of like judging their defense. But if we're going to go off the numbers, they have a top 5 defense in college football. So I think that's the only way they stay in this game is if they can slow down Texas. The problem with Texas that I'm worried about is we're all waiting for the letdown game, right? Texas is always back. They're always back. And it feels like this could be the game where we go, never mind, they're not back. So I'm worried about that. I don't think it's going to be a 49-0 thrashing. I think this one's going to be close. I hope it's a shootout. The rivalry used to be called that. But I feel like this is one of those trap games for Texas. And I hate to say it because I want Texas to be back as much as anyone. I live here in Austin. It's real fun when your team, locally is good and everyone's going to the games and stuff. But I'm worried. I'm super worried. What about you?
I get that you're worried. I mean, Dillon Gabriel is having a phenomenal season so far. They're blowing out opponents. But my counter argument to this whole thing is, who the heck has Oklahoma played? The schedule's pretty soft so far. You've got teams like Tulsa and just Arkansas State. I know they beat Cincinnati, but Cincinnati is not the team that it used to be. I don't see it. I think this Longhorns team's really legit, man. Quinn Ewers, I was a huge doubter coming out of high school. I just like any quarterback with a mullet. I'm like, I don't know if I can buy into you. Ever since he's gotten rid of that mullet, that kid looks like a surefire first-round pick to me. Phenomenal quarterback prospect. And then you've got insane speed and Xavier Worthy, just a stud wide receiver. You got talent all across that offense. I can't see it. I just haven't seen enough from Oklahoma. We don't know what it looks like when they're playing a level up in competition. So I'm taking the Longhorns in this one. Regardless, it's going to be one that everyone should be watching. Should be probably the biggest game of the weekend. It's a college football show, and I think we've gone a couple minutes without talking about Deion Sanders in Colorado. I just have something to say before we get into this. These two losses from Colorado and Deion Sanders, I think I'm more bought in on Coach Prime than I was with the 3 wins. And it's not that they've lost, and it's not that it's looked kind of bad. I think it's how they've responded to the losses. Everyone's talking about how Deion's doing this for clicks and attention and all that. I do genuinely think Deion Sanders cares about these kids. He's holding them accountable. We can talk about Cormani McLean and him calling him out like, listen, that kid's not watching film. I need him bought into this program in order to, get playing time. And just how they responded to USC, like, I believe in these kids more than ever. Like, if you're not on board now, you're just a hater, because we held our own against a top program. And I believe that we are building something special here. Those 2 losses to me made me think that this is no longer just a show or a circus. Like, this is clearly Deion Sanders is in it for the long haul. I have all the respect in the world for him. I really do think he's doing something special in Colorado. That being said, there is a star player that emerged in this game against USC. Omarion Miller, the freshman, just an outstanding performance against the Trojans. What is the ceiling for him in this offense, especially when Travis Hunter's healthy?
I mean, I feel like people we're forgetting because of the final score, but we're forgetting the game was 34-7 at one point. Yeah. I mean, Colorado is still not in that upper echelon of the Pac-12 and college football in general. We saw them get thrashed with Oregon, USC as well. I think USC's defense sort of let up, and I know there's questions regarding their defense that we're going to talk to at some point here, but I think they let up a little bit because they were up so big. So I'm not even super convinced that Colorado, they hung in there with USC, who's probably going to be a CFP team. I think, they got up so big that it was just more of all right, we can, let our foot off the gas, which USC should never do, first of all. So as far as their ceiling, I'm still a little hesitant. I don't think they run the table the rest of the way. I think they have, maybe a couple more losses. But like even a 4 or 5 loss season for this team is terrific, right? Like they get another year to recruit. They keep bringing in kids. Let Deion do his thing. Of course, let him do his chatter, his talk, making things personal before the games. But a 4 or 5 loss season for a team that had, 1 win last year, that is still fantastic. That is still terrific. And he made everyone care about and is making everyone care about Colorado. Like, can you imagine saying that like 5 years ago or even like a few years ago? Like everyone is tuning into the Colorado Buffaloes. Like, what? Like how? Why? Like it's crazy.
I'm excited. I think I think the Omarion Miller experience last week is just kind of that example of, listen, we're probably going to go to a bowl game and that might be it. But this is the perfect opportunity of what is next year going to look like. Let's get these super young kids some playing time, see who's capable of sticking around and where we need to address recruiting. So I'm and the transfer portal, obviously, but I'm super fascinated to see what happens with that. Super excited for Marion Miller because that kid was an absolute beast. But he did kind of poke holes in, and let's switch sides to the USC defense. Obviously, Caleb Williams is the Heisman frontrunner, neck and neck with Michael Penix out of Washington. That defense, though, looked awfully sloppy in that second half against Colorado. We saw at the beginning of the year against San Jose State. Is this going to be another year where Caleb Williams' incredible season gets derailed by a bad defense?
I really hope not. You just mentioned it. San Jose State giving up 28 points to them, giving up 28 to Arizona State. Like that just can't happen. And I don't know if it's a scheming thing. You're the coach here, so you probably know better than I do. I don't know if it's like a personnel issue or what, but like they're giving up a lot of points, and it feels like one of these games they're just going to give up too many to where Caleb has to. I mean, it feels like he has to always play perfect, right, or play better than his defense is playing. So when you look on their schedule, I'm looking at Notre Dame, who has a good defense. If Caleb Williams falters a little bit, they're going to need their defense to step up. I look at Washington, who has a great offense with the guy you just mentioned. That could be a shootout. In a shootout, it kind of comes down to who's going to make that final stop, who's going to get that pick, that fumble that's going to, affect the outcome of the game. So I don't know. It should be interesting. I'm going to say yes, he can make up for it with his offense because that's what I want. It would be cool to see USC, sort of take control of college football and win a national championship, back to those good old years. But yeah, I'm going to give him for right now. I'm going to say, yeah, he can carry them. But it feels like, we're kind of waiting on the game that the defense just gives up like 60 points.
Well, they got a buzzsaw of a schedule going forward in the Pac-12. And, fans are getting a little nervous about defensive coordinator Alex Grinch. I know his name doesn't exactly inspire confidence, but this is a guy that Lincoln Riley is just incredibly loyal to. I mean, they worked together in Oklahoma where he was the defensive coordinator and safeties coach. Now he's there at USC rolling the defense and just it's kind of let them down, last season and season that like all the Heisman buzz and national championship talk, and it just kind of got derailed in that final game against Utah. I think there's some upset alert coming down the road, and I think it's going to be that defense. I don't know if Riley sticks with Grinch after the season, if that's what ends up happening, but it'll be kind of interesting. All right. Will is back here to talk about a couple more things for a week. Again, full slate outside of just the Red River Showdown. But obviously one of the ones everyone wants to talk about after a couple, lackadaisical performances from the Georgia Bulldogs. Kentucky, Georgia. Kentucky kind of building something over there. Got a dominant running back. Devin Leary's winning, but how good is he really? But everyone's talking about, is Kentucky going to be the team that takes down this number 1 ranked Georgia Bulldogs team?
Yeah, I'd love to see it. I mean, I've been high on this Kentucky team since before the season. I've been ranking them all year, but I don't know. The team looks outstanding, but I think it takes a complete effort to beat a team like Georgia, and that's going to mean production from your quarterback. I mean, you just look at Auburn. They came so close. They got to play at legendary Jordan-Hare Stadium, where all sorts of wackiness has always happened. But the team ran for 219 yards, 2 scores, 5.1 yards per carry, but they didn't get a passing performance. Now, credit where it's due. Peyton Thorne was their leading runner, so he contributed in that way. But 10 for 19 passing for 82 yards, no touchdowns and a pick. That's not going to get it done. And Devin Leary, who I was really high on coming into the year, has been borderline useless this season. I mean, I don't know what's going on. They're working on his mechanics, but that's something that needed to be smoothed out over August between preseason and those tune-up games that all the FBS teams get. So 9 for 19, 69 yards this week. It's just not there. I mean, we'll talk about Ray Davis in a little bit and how he was able to carry the team, but as good as Florida has been in a lot of ways, they are not Georgia. So you can dominate. You can completely dominate one facet of the game and use that to beat a pretty good team or to a legitimately good team, but you cannot dominate one facet to beat a back-to-back national champion who's lost one game in the last 2.5 years. So you're going to need a full effort, both sides of the football. Thought Kentucky looked great in a lot of ways, but the most important position in the game has still been a weak spot, even though they hit the transfer portal to replace Will Levis.
Yeah. As a Bulldogs fan, I am a little bit nervous. Ray Davis does scare me. I mean, this guy went under the radar this year for some reason. He ran for over 1,000 yards despite Chris Rodriguez sharing that backfield last season. He's up to almost 600 yards, 8 touchdowns, 7.8 yards a carry, just ridiculous production. And this Georgia defense just doesn't have the star players that it had the past 2 seasons. And obviously they have star players, but it's not every single position is a guy that's going to the NFL and is going to dominate like they did in the past. Offensively for the Bulldogs, I have faith that things are going to start turning around. I think the last 2 weeks they figured out they have a cheat code in the greatest tight end in college football, and we can talk about him in a little bit. And then the return of Ladd McConkey, and I know it's a preposterous name for a white guy playing wide receiver, but that kid can freaking play. I don't care what anyone says. Anytime I watch Ladd McConkey, that guy is a separator. He can push the field vertically. He can make big catches on third down, move the sticks. Just think there's a couple more weapons on there. They're getting a bit more healthy on offense. Obviously, the potential loss of Amarius Mims might not be awesome at tackle. But I do have faith that this offense is turning around. I've been impressed with Carson Beck's poise, even if I'm not totally sold on him as a player. Just think it takes some time. I think it might be getting the upset alert might be getting a little overhyped. I
would agree. And I think something that's important to note is Kirby Smart's an incredible motivator.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think there's been a lot of wild moments in sports, but there's been very few that have had me just shaking my head puzzled than Georgia players running on the field after they won the Natty last year being like, no one believed in us. Everyone doubted us. They were saying 7-8 wins. If he was able to convince his team last year that they were being underestimated, he definitely has bulletin board material now. Georgia's hemorrhaging first place votes. They started the season getting, I think, 60 of 63. Michigan stole one. Ohio State stole one, but that'll always happen. Now they have 35, I believe. They're somewhere around the 50% mark. Not that there's a true usurper to the throne. Like Michigan's next with 13 votes. Texas got 12, but Georgia's slipping. They're losing share, and Kirby will be sure to tell his players that. Interestingly, that's only happening in the AP poll. They're still solid in the coaches poll, so maybe there's a little differential in perception. But if he's been able to tell his guys that they're underdogs when they were the defending national champions who had knocked off Alabama, I think he's got something to say now. So especially to Carson Beck, so he's going to have the guys fired up. Their season probably starts now, so I think they'll get this one done.
It is weird to me that Kentucky's a football school now because I'm just so used to those basketball programs being dominant. But now here we are. Last few seasons, Kentucky's really been solid. Kentucky's
a football school. Louisville's 5-0. Duke UNC is a football rivalry. I mean, I don't really know what's going on right now, but I'm having fun with it.
Yeah, me too. And obviously, when SEC teams collide, there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on those games. So, obviously the other big SEC showdown, Alabama and Texas A&M, going to be one of the more interesting battles. Texas A&M, after a really disappointing year last year, starting to look like a bit more of a feisty SEC program this year. Alabama's still trying to figure out the quarterback situation with Jalen Milroe. I'm still not sure if he's the guy. Max Johnson's looking solid for the Aggies. What are you looking for in this game? And then are you predicting that Alabama holds on? What are you looking at?
Bama defense has been, I don't understand how an Alabama defense goes underrated at this point, but it's happening. Yeah. I mean, you look at what they did against Ole Miss and then what Ole Miss has done in their other games. I mean, the LSU defense is disappointing in so many ways, but that was a complete performance. Jackson Dart and his wideouts getting after it. Quinshon Judkins, what a run game they have. And Alabama just made them look like a MAC team. It was absolutely wild. Both the defenses coming into this Alabama A&M game are top 25 by EPA per play, top 5 in success rate versus the pass. So it's going to be a tough test for Max Johnson. Production-wise, he's been no drop-off from Weigman after the injury, but this is his toughest test by a mile and a half. I don't think A&M has the run defense to stay in this game. They're going to go to the air way too often on offense against Alabama's outstanding secondary, while Alabama's going to find enough success running the ball to be multifaceted on offense and not lean on Milroe. I think the prompt here, we had a score update or a score pick somewhere in there. I'm thinking maybe Alabama 27, A&M 20. I don't know. Maybe A&M could get held into the teens, but this is going to be a tough, hard-fought SEC battle. I'm looking forward to it.
I really need to see something from Milroe, man, because I see all the athletic gifts in the world. You can see that guy. I love, how he just kind of commands the team. I loved that little shot of him when he was not the starter celebrating his teammate that had taken the starting quarterback job. But at the same time, man, just keep your eyes upfield. We know you can run. Show us that you can make through your progressions. Otherwise, you can't really play quarterback at the SEC level. Gonna be a tough one. I think it's going to be a fascinating thing. I still think Alabama holds on. I just, like you said, this defense isn't getting enough love. Kool-Aid McKinstry is like built in a lab of what you want out of a defensive back. He's just an absolute freak. You have some pass rushers. I think this is a very fun defense. And just something about Jimbo. I always get bad Jimbo vibes in a game like this. Very curious to see how him and Nick Saban interact during this game. Last thing we wanted to have Will on here for, though, is Heisman Watch. Let's talk about, obviously the two guys everyone's talking about right now, Michael Penix, Caleb Williams. There are a couple guys that I think need a little bit more love. Starting with Brock Bowers. I know this sounds like a homer pick. It's a little weird. He's starting to get some buzz after the last two games. 413 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think it's more of just he has this production the last 2 weeks as a tight end. Is there any hope that he can get into that finalist conversation if he keeps going off like this? And then is there anyone else on that outside looking in you think can become a finalist by the end of the year?
I think it's a toughie for Brock. I mean, in a vacuum, he might be the best at his particular job of maybe anyone on offense in the whole country outside of, I don't know, maybe Caleb or Olu Fashanu. But we thank you for hitting me with the assignment of the tight end Heisman history, because now I know what the numbers say, and it's a tough one. There hasn't been a tight end to finish top 10 since the 70s. There hasn't been a winner since just outside of World War II. And while Brock is incredible film-wise, prospect-wise, production numbers, Georgia doesn't lean on anyone enough to get them to Heisman numbers, particularly Brock. He needed to do what Heisman winners do. Like, I think back to Lamar Jackson putting 7 touchdowns on Charlotte. You really have to beat up on the earlier teams that are outside of your conference schedule, at least in terms of just getting at least one counting stat up to a elite level. And Brock's been great, but hasn't really done that. In terms of some other sleepers, I feel like sleepers hardly matter because Caleb's going to win. 21 touchdowns ahead of 16 in second place, and he has 1 pick. It's just crazy. But assuming the non-sleepers are pretty much Caleb, Penix, Bo Nix, and Sam Hartman, there's 3 sleepers I want to take a quick look at and talk about dominating one category and talk about a homer pick. We're going to briefly dig into Roman Wilson. 9 touchdowns, Randy Moss impression over the weekend. Dude's absolutely crazy. He could get more yardage as Michigan is forced to throw deeper into games as they play more Power 5 opponents. And frankly, if Michigan goes undefeated, which I think so, if the guy is getting into the high teens in touchdowns, which he might because J.J. McCarthy has shown no intention to throw a touchdown to anybody else, the team could easily have one candidate, and J.J. may have literally disqualified himself by throwing 3 picks against Bowling Green. So, Bowling Green looks sharp, but that was crazy. So if Roman's got 17, 18 touchdowns, I don't know why he wouldn't have a top 5 shot or something. Meanwhile, Ray Davis, I tried not to talk about him too much so I could bring him up here. Dude's incredible. He announced himself. And it's all about these moments and the momentum in the Heisman race. 280 ground yards in a ranked win after everyone was saying Kentucky hasn't played anyone. 3 touchdowns. And he could have a true Heisman moment if he picks up a big score in a potential upset of Georgia. And if they beat Georgia, we're talking SEC championship berth. I mean, the sky's the limit for what his team resume could be. And then lastly, I mentioned Hartman. Hartman hasn't thrown a touchdown in 2 games, I'm pretty sure. So he's probably done. That being said, Audric Estime, his running back, leads the nation in ground yardage. Dude is explosive. He's an athlete. Some NFL team is going to make a mistake by picking him in the first half of the first round, but we can get into running back theory later on. The dude is an incredible talent, and as far as college football goes, he's one of the best difference makers in the whole country. So if Notre Dame, they escaped Duke. That was a crazy game. Poor Riley Leonard, but big win for Notre Dame. And if they can get through the rest of the schedule unscathed, 11-1 fringe playoff team. Estime is going to get some votes if he keeps leading the nation in yards.
Yeah, I'm glad we're doing this segment because there's too much to talk about. Deion Sanders and Caleb Williams, and just some guys need some love. And one of those guys I'm going to say right now, I genuinely think he could be a Heisman finalist. However, he's playing on the West Coast. There's not a lot of eyeballs on him. He's playing in the Pac-12. Where there's just a ton of competition. But Cam Ward.
Yep.
Cam Ward. Transfer out of Incarnate Word, which I had never heard of as a school last year. Looked pretty solid, 23 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. He is on a tear right now. 1,390 yards, completing 75% of his passes, 13 touchdowns, no interceptions. I mean, there's probably no way he's a finalist. However, if they keep winning and they pull off some upsets against ranked opponents in the Pac-12, and they end that year playing in the Pac-12 championship with those kinds of numbers, he deserves to be in it. Problem is, it's the McCaffrey effect I always think about. Voters don't watch the West Coast games, and it's infuriating. Christian McCaffrey got robbed of a Heisman in 2015. So I'm just worried. I'm not saying he's going to win it, but I'm really hoping Cameron Ward gets some love as the year goes on.
I think that's a great shout. I mean, maybe he could get on the stage. You look at the schedule, and it's perfect to me because you do need to beat someone. You need to have a Heisman. I mean, if you didn't need to beat anyone, Mackenzie Milton would have a Heisman and maybe Grayson McCall. So you got to beat someone. But this isn't like as good as the Pac-12 is this year. And man, what an incredible Pac-12. I mean, we're talking about 3 of the contenders are Pac-12 quarterbacks and one of our sleepers. And we could, if they had beaten Utah, we could be talking Dante Moore right now. He's phenomenal. But as loaded as the Pac is, I don't think they have the craziest schedule going forward after having beaten Oregon State. UCLA, that's a crazy game this week. I'm excited for that. But the only other really top-end opponents they have are Oregon, and then anything can happen in the Apple Cup with Washington and Wazoo. McCaffrey effect is an issue. I don't even know if we've talked about this, Tyler, but I grew up a Stanford fan. And that one broke my heart. I don't want to take anything away from Derrick Henry. I consider that the greatest Heisman race of all time. But, I mean, he had like 28 touchdowns for a great Alabama team. But McCaffrey he put in the best college season I've ever seen. And if you're not on USC, it's really hard to get recognized out of the West Coast. I don't know. I mean, you look back to that Oregon offense, but this Washington State team just isn't putting up the crazy numbers that Oregon one was. Yeah. So they might have to win out for Cam Ward to get the credit he's due, and he is due plenty.
Yeah. Back to McCaffrey. I don't think I can let this go either. He did everything. It wasn't just running the ball. That guy could do everything. Even as a return man, he was, creating explosive plays.
He threw multiple passing touchdowns that season.
Oh my gosh. Just infuriating. I think that he did not get it.
It all comes down to that 9 a.m. Pacific time kickoff at Northwestern. Stanford loses opening day 16-6. Goes I think 12-1 the rest of the way. Dominant Rose Bowl win, and that was the day I started saying Heisman voting should be after the bowls because that was a crazy game. But he's still doing it in the NFL, but so is Derek. So it's tough to say there was an undeserving winner that year.
Yeah, it is kind of incredible that both of those guys have gone on to be kind of legendary NFL running backs.
Probably. There's been a lot of times they've been the top 2 guys in the league. I mean, it's hard to say Derek was a thief there, but McCaffrey deserved one too.
Yeah. Well, Will, I think that's enough McCaffrey talk for both of us, but appreciate you coming on again. I'm sure we'll see you again next week to talk about some more ball. Move away from the Pac-12. We still got some other good games besides the Red River Showdown this week. Do you have anyone on upset alert?
I do. I mean, we got to talk about Alabama. I'm worried about Alabama because they're on the road in College Station against Texas A&M. I know they don't have their quarterback. They've got Max Johnson, who's a capable backup. But if you remember 2 years ago when Zach Calzada, who was a backup, went in there and beat Alabama, they had the Seth Small, walk-off field goal. This game is always close, especially in College Station. And we've already seen Jalen Milroe stumble a little bit. This feels like it could be one of those games that ends Alabama's season. And I know, Nick Saban was very animated on the sidelines against Mississippi State this week. I don't know if that's, him trying to light a fire under his players' butts or what, but I have this one as an upset alert game just because it's always close in College Station. It always feels close. Max Johnson is as a solid backup. That's the only one I see. But Alabama feels like they could slip up. What do you think?
I could see it. Alabama's having a very weird year. My pick is going to be Louisville over Notre Dame. Notre Dame's played a couple really close games, kind of on the final play of games. It feels like they're holding on, but Louisville is sneaky having a great season with Jeff Brom in his first year as head coach. Brought Jack Plummer from Purdue, threw 5 touchdowns a couple weeks ago against Boston College. They're clicking on all cylinders. That's a very legitimate program. I may be an IU grad. I respect Jeff Brom. He did a lot of good stuff at Purdue. I've heard nothing but good things about the guy. I know he's recruited some kids from our high school. So all the respect in the world of Brom. I think he's doing something special. And Notre Dame, man, like you can only play that close to the chest so much before you get got. I know they got against Ohio State, but I think this is a big upset alert for them. I think that's all we got then. Appreciate everyone listening. Make sure that you're subscribing to FanBuzz Weekly, wherever you're listening to this, podcast, YouTube, anywhere. We appreciate all the support. See you next time.